If you like today's show, please hit the like button and share it. Also, hit the notification bell for alerts for upcoming segments. And please subscribe to my channel. And feel free to leave a comment about today's show, along with any suggestion and ideas for upcoming shows. This Is Me is on all social platforms, and our information is at the bottom of the screen. We are also available on most podcast platforms such as Google, Anchor, Spotify, Overcast, Breaker, and Radio Public. I want to thank you, my viewers and listeners, for tuning in. Hi, I'm Diane Allen, and welcome to This Is Me. Dealing with COVID, shutdowns, and the holiday season which is upon us, I think many of us are probably experiencing some level of stress and depression. Some level of stress and depression are a normal part of life which cannot be avoided. But when does normal stress and depression turn into something that you cannot manage and become unhealthy? On today's show, we will be talking about mental health and depression, the importance of good mental health, and what are the signs of stress and depression, how to identify what is normal and when to seek help. My guest today, William Precyson, who is a licensed professional counselor, will give us some insights on this topic. Hi, Bill.
Good morning.
Welcome to This Is Me.
I'm glad to be here, Diane.
And we're glad to have you. I must say, Bill, I value your friendship very much, as well as my husband. And we've known each other for quite a while.
Yes.
And I also must say that other than my husband, you are the only other male that I've had on the show.
I am honored.
So that says a lot about how I feel about you.
Thank you.
So I want you to maybe tell our guests, as our viewers, as well as my listeners, a little bit about who Bill Precyson is.
Okay. Bill Precyson is a complicated human being who has done a number of things in my lifetime, but currently for the last 16, 17 years, I've been working in counseling. I've been working with clients, patients who struggle with depression, anxiety. Lots of times that's complicated by drug use and alcohol use, etc. So I work with individuals, with couples, and with families in private counseling.
Wow. Well, you are the perfect guest for our topic today, which is on depression and stress and anxiety. So again, thank you for coming in. And we're just going to start with our questions that maybe you can help our viewers. So many define physical and financial, educational, and spiritual well-being as very important to them. Now, where would you put our mental well-being in conjunction with those?
Yeah, that's a very good question. Thank you for that. Mental health is sometimes at the top of everything that is important in our lives, with the possible exception of the spiritual aspect. A lot of times when I check in with clients when they come to see me, I also ask them about their connection with God, with their higher power, and that's very important. But mental health really affects everything else in our lives to a certain extent. Poor mental health can make us physically ill. It can lead to us losing our faith. It can certainly negatively impact our finances, particularly with addictions. It's very important to maintain a stable mental health. Mm-hmm.
So would you say it would be high on the list as far as importance?
Right now, during this pandemic, perhaps it's elevated because so many people are isolated. So many people are turning to unhealthy habits. So right now it's very important. And because people are isolating, it's really important for friends and especially family members to constantly check in with each other.
So without good mental health as an individual, maybe the rest of, and since it affects the rest of our lives, everything else can fall apart if we don't have good mental health.
Yes, yes.
Now, I know we have stress in our life, and sometimes we can be stressed out and really don't realize it. So how can we tell if we are really stressed out?
Yeah, and stress is a natural and important part of life. We all deal with stress in our daily lives. When we get to the point where we're turning to alcohol, we're turning to gambling, when we're turning to unhealthy habits in our lives, we know that stress is overwhelming us. And a lot of times that obviates itself in the way we treat those who are closest to us, sometimes our spouses, sometimes our children. And we have a tendency to snap out on people when we're overstressed. For some people in this current pandemic, working from home is fine. It's a blessing. For others, it's a curse because they get too isolated.
Yeah.
And I'm working with clients now who work from home, but because they have so much, quote, freedom to do what they want, they are turning to alcohol, for example, early in the morning
Yeah.
to relieve stress. Obviously, that's going to be a dead end for people.
So self-medicating and like you said, it seems like people are indulging in other things to relieve that stress, and those are signals that we are really, stress is starting to really get to
Overwhelmed,
us.
yeah. And, you know, there are plenty of sources of help. The important aspect is that a person does reach out for help. It doesn't have to be with a counselor or a therapist or a psychologist. It can be with a spiritual person. It can be with a close friend to, I guess, just be so modest that you can admit to yourself, I am overwhelmed and I don't know where to turn next. Open up to somebody, whether it's a faith leader, whether it's a counselor, trusted friend, etc. The important part is open up to somebody.
Yeah.
Don't just let it go on and on and on, because it can be a bottomless pit.
So now my next question was to give us some tips for dealing with stress. So maybe, I know you just started on some, like reaching out and, to individuals, but what are some coping mechanisms that we can have as an individual?
Right. Well, a lot of people turn to meditation. I'm a Quaker myself, and meditation and prayer to us are two aspects of the same function, to turn inward and open up to God. It's a very important thing.
Yes, it is.
However you conceive God to be. I'm not talking about a Christian or a Muslim or whatever. Being able to open up. For some people, exercise is very important, you know, to maintain an exercise regimen. For others, it's diet, making sure that you're not stuffing yourself with the wrong foods all the time.
That's true.
So those are some real basic aspects of keeping yourself healthy, physically, mentally, and spiritually.
Right.
Perhaps the most important, and where a lot of people are struggling, is with sleep. More and more we're finding that overly stressed people are sinking into depression, and their sleep is very irregular.
Sleep deprived.
Yeah.
Oh, well, those are some good coping mechanisms that we really need to keep in mind. And I think sometimes we, you know, like you were saying, the diet aspect of our life that we don't really think about, but a good diet of eating, you know, a proper amount of fruits, vegetables, all those things help to our mental well-being as well. you
Right.
know. So
Yeah.
now, when it comes to warning signs, what are some warning signs that we're slipping into depression? And maybe first of all, maybe you can maybe just talk about what depression really is,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
and then the warning signs.
The warning signs, major warning signs for depression, I've already kind of mentioned in different ways. Changes in your sleep patterns. You can't get enough sleep, or you can't get out of bed. You lack motivation to even start your day. You get out of bed and right away you're feeling anxious. You're feeling overwhelmed. You're not looking forward to the day's activities. You feel overwhelmed and alone. These are important warning signs. And if those go on day after day and week after week, sooner rather than later, reach out to somebody for help. And there's lots of different ways to reach
Yeah.
out, and we've talked about those a little bit.
Now, my show deals with women 50 and over. So why do you think women 50 and over, and I've read that they are more susceptible to depression?
I blame men.
I think you and a lot of other women will be saying.
In some ways, there's truth in that, though.
Yeah.
There's feminine and masculine aspects and ways of approaching issues. The masculine aspect is not really listening.
Yeah.
Men are generally much poorer at listening than women are.
Yeah.
And women need to be able to talk and feel comfortable in describing what they're experiencing.
Yeah.
Men want to fix something.
Yeah.
Tell me what the problem is, and I'll tell you the solution.
Yes.
And that really doesn't help.
Right.
I'm afraid as we get older, women tend to shut down and not be able to comfortably express what they're experiencing inside. So I would encourage all the men out there to just work at being a conscious listener.
Yeah.
You don't have to come up with a solution.
Right.
Just let the person that you love so much express themselves comfortably to you, and don't be watching football at the same time.
Yes. Yes. So women want to be heard, and we want to be able to express what we think and what we feel, and I think men sometimes don't always realize that. And like you were saying, you don't have to have an answer,
Right.
For us, but just have that listening ear,
Yeah.
and don't shut us down.
Right.
Don't
ever say, honey, just get to the point.
Yes. Now, it's said that suicide is higher nationwide for men than women. And so is that because we as women will probably talk and seek out help rather than men would?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, it's part of this false pride of masculine, men. Like, I can figure out this on my own. Well, guess what? Sometimes you can't. And to humble yourself and just say, look, I can't do this alone. Allow yourself to experience the pain that's inside of you before it gets so bad that it overwhelms you.
Yeah.
And I'm afraid that a lot of men aren't really good at doing that.
Yeah, and I think maybe that's where we as women can, if we can talk to our men and get them to open up a little bit more, that could change things far as if they're dealing with something, I'm here, let your guard down, and become a little bit more vulnerable,
Right, and the way men and women express their inner difficulties, their inner pain, is so different. And when Bruce and I worked with adolescents, we knew, for the most part, that the boys, the young males, would fight. They would get aggressive. They would curse. They would swear. They would throw things. The girls, on the other hand, would develop eating disorders
Yeah.
or cutting themselves, sinking into some deep drug problems. And so both are
Yeah.
horrible. The thing is that a lot of times the girls' problems are more hidden.
Oh, yes.
And the boys are like, oh, you can tell that I've got issues because,
I'm
bam,
acting it out. Yeah.
right, they're acting them out. And so we have to deal in different ways
Yes.
with those symptoms, I'd say.
Now, I wanted to ask also, is mental illness, is that something that's inherited, or is it something that, because of situations and that people, may be dealing with and they just can't seem to get out of it, they sink into that depression, or is it something that, is inherited?
Not, there is an inherited aspect. There's genes. That's not as important as how you were treated as a child by your parents. That is the biggest factor in creating a healthy adult is creating a healthy childhood. And a lot of times our kids were subject to different kinds of neglect or abuse as children. And so I would say genetic takes a back seat to just good parenting versus bad parenting. Yeah.
Oh, that's put a good light on that, because you can have that genetic part, but if you have a good family that's
Absolutely.
nurturing you,
Absolutely.
It can be something that can be
Yeah.
overcome.
Yeah. Yeah. And I would just add that anybody who's as a child was subjected to difficult circumstances, whether it be poverty, neglect, abuse of different kinds, that does not mean that you are condemned to a life of difficulties.
Right.
It is very possible, probably probable, that if you work at it, you will become a happy, fulfilled, functioning adult. So, it doesn't mean that you're going to have to perpetuate this and pass it on to your own kids or pass it on to others.
Right. That's just sort of like alcoholism. When, if it runs in the family, you say, I'm predisposed to it or whatever,
Right.
But it doesn't have to be.
Exactly. Yeah, we have free will.
Yes, that's it. Now, how can our faith help us, in times of stress and depression? How can our faith help us, and can faith and medicine work together?
Oh boy, that's a great question. Personally, one of the darkest times that I had in my life was in the mid-'80s. And I had, up until that time, been something of an agnostic. I had abandoned religion, but I felt a spiritual yearning. And it was because I was depressed. It was because things were out of control in my life. And so I tried different places to go into. And finally I went into a Quaker meeting house in Norristown. And I felt peace. And I felt like there was a connection with God that lifted my spirits. And it was a wonderful thing to happen for me. And we would have Bibles on the benches. And one time when I was particularly struggling and looking for an answer, I just opened the Bible to a random page. And it spoke to me.
Wow.
The passage spoke to me. It was there for me. And I knew. I knew experientially that was my connection with God.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, wonderful. And some people, if they're on medication and they have Christ in their life, they sometimes will say, that's all I need, and abandon the medication and because they fear God can heal me, He can lift me,
Right.
And I don't need the medication.
I would
How do you-
discourage. I would
yeah.
discourage that thinking.
Yeah.
I'm not a big fan of psychotropic meds, but they do play a role in helping a person feel a little bit better. It doesn't fix everything,
Yeah.
but it plays a role for a lot of people. So I would not abandon the thought of, and I work with people in AA and NA, and some of those folks feel, no, you shouldn't be taking any medications
Right.
because if you are, then you're not clean and sober. I disagree with that
Yeah.
viewpoint.
Yeah, I agree with you that God can still heal and does heal, but if you need help, that's what the doctors and physicians are for.
Yes. Yeah.
Now, if we do see ourselves or someone in our family, our loved ones who are struggling, what can we do? Because sometimes you do maybe feel like, I am being overwhelmed. Or you look at a loved one and you may see some signs that they may be overwhelmed. What is some things that we can do for
Yeah.
ourselves and for our loved ones?
Right. And Diane, our kids, our spouses, our relatives, sometimes they will say something that indicates that they're in deep trouble. Instinctively, we want to back off from people we feel are suicidal. It's our own fear that keeps us from addressing. Somebody may come out with a short statement, and you're like, what? What did I just hear? And you want to ignore it because it scares you. And I just implore people not to ignore any warning signs that somebody is struggling. I've mentioned too much sleep, not enough sleep, drug use, isolation. If we ignore those signs and those little messages that somebody might come out with, like, my life's not worth living. What? Don't say that. We want to tell people, don't say that. It's important that they do say it, and we hear it, and we be with that person.
Right.
Take time with that person.
Yeah, because you hear so many sad stories. Well, I didn't know they were, struggling with this.
Yeah.
Or I wish I would have called someone. Or I wish I would have called that person. Because I saw maybe that they were down, but I didn't realize that they were down that much. So it is important nowadays that we do stay in touch with one another. And if
Especially
we,
now.
see someone struggling to, try to get them help or, point them to where those resources can be so they can get the help that they need.
And if you haven't heard from so-and-so in a week or a month or 2 months, give them a call. Get in touch with that person and just check in.
Yes.
Give them some time.
Now, we know this is the holiday season, and for many people it is a sad time as well as a happy time. And there will be people, who will be around the table, and it's going to be empty chair, empty seat where that loved one is not going to be there. So what can you say to, encourage or help that individual?
Yeah. Holidays are crazy, and I'm not thrilled with the way we in America, quote, celebrate the holidays. We have to keep in mind what the meaning of the season is and make sure that we're not overextending ourselves by buying too much, by trying to eat too much, drink too much, etc. Keep it simple. But yeah, people, holiday time is wonderful and it can be awful. And whichever it is for you, and I encourage people to laugh and share the joy of the holiday season wherever and whenever you can, and reach out to those who are in need. Sometimes we're missing somebody, and we have the opportunity to spread a little bit of kindness and joy to somebody else.
Yes.
Take that opportunity because it will come back to you.
Well, Bill, I thank you for coming on the show. I thank you for sharing all your knowledge and wisdom on this topic. And please, you're always welcome to come back.
Oh, thank you, Diane. I love you and Bruce.
Oh, and we love you and Annette. And again, thank you for being a part of our life. And again, I want to thank my viewers and my listeners for tuning in. And until next time, I'm Diane Allen, and this is me. If you or someone you know is having difficulties coping with depression, please reach out for help. There is hope and healing. There are hotlines and resources across every city and county across the country. Please don't suffer. There is help. I would like to end today's show with a couple of verses from the Bible that is relevant to a good, healthy outlook for your mind and attitude. Philippians 4:6-8 in the New Living Translation. Don't worry about anything. Instead, pray about everything. Tell God what you need and thank Him for all He has done. Then you will experience God's peace, which exceeds anything that we can understand. And His peace will guard your hearts and your minds as we live in Christ Jesus. Surely God's peace can help us transcend through every struggle we can face in life as we live through Christ Jesus. I'm Diane Allen, and until next time, this is me.